Hello, my name's Karen, and this is the Gospel according to Karen. It's taken me quite a while to do this, if I'm honest, because I don't have a dramatic conversion experience to share with you. And there's a lot I could share, but I wanted to not take too long. So I thought that I would focus on the ways that God has guided me through my life. So to that end, I'd like to start with a Bible verse from Proverbs. That has been very true for me in my life, and you'll see it will crop up a bit later in my story as well. So it's from Proverbs 3, verses 5 to 6, and it says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not depend on your own understanding. Seek his way in all that you do, and he will show you which path to take." So I don't actually remember a time when I didn't know about Jesus and about his love for me. I was really fortunate that I was brought up in a home that had a heritage of Christianity. My mum ran the local Sunday school, and I loved hearing the message of the Bible and about how much God loves me, and that he loves me so much that he sent his only son, Jesus, to die on a cross to take the punishment for my sins so that I could be forgiven and have a relationship with him. So I was really fortunate to have that at a young age, and also very fortunate that in the next village to me there was an amazing vicar and an amazing group of people that ran a lot of kids activities, pathfinders and a youth group. So I had lots of opportunities to be with other Christians, to receive mentoring and guidance, and just be encouraged really to grow and learn about Jesus. And I suppose the first time I remember praying for myself, I was probably about 11, and I'd passed my 11 plus. It was all great excitement. I was going into the grammar school in the next town. And it was pretty scary, actually, going from a small village school to a large upper school. It was all quite posh, and you had to have special uniform and proper PE knickers, I remember. And it was all, and a science lab coat. It was all a bit daunting. So I remember being really scared about this. And I remember my mum saying, well, actually, you can pray, and ask Jesus to help you. And I remember kneeling down that night and probably having my first proper conversation with Jesus and just asking him to be with me and help me. And from that point on, prayer's been really important to me. And I can honestly say that through everything that we've walked through, I have always been aware of Jesus' presence and not being on my own, which is an amazing blessing and privilege. But I think the downside to having known God's love as a child is that I took it for granted. And in my teenage years, although I still loved God, I didn't walk as closely with him as I could have. I didn't follow all his ways. I made a lot of mistakes in those years. But thankfully, I had a praying mum. And she was obviously praying particularly hard that I would find a husband, and I did. And I met my husband when I was 18, and we got married when I was 20. So I didn't have too much time to get into too much trouble. When we were first married, we lived in Weymouth, and some friends invited us to their church, their local church, which was much more modern than I was used to, having grown up in a quite a traditional Anglican church in the village. And we started to go along, and it was great fun. It was modern, with modern songs, and we got to know quite a few people there. And that's probably the point that I started to get back on track and start to grow in my faith again. So by the time I was in my mid-20s, we were living back in the village that I grew up in, we decided to move back to the countryside to bring our children up. And it just so happened that there was a house on the market that we could afford in our village, in my old village. So we put an offer in, and we didn't think it would be accepted, but it was. So we moved back. And within a few years, it was my turn to run the Sunday school, which was absolutely brilliant. And we had probably about 12 local children attending, which was lovely. And I had two other ladies that ran it with me, and we used to meet and pray for our children, the children that were attending the Sunday school, but also for the local school. And we decided to really make the local school a focus for our prayers, that God would bless it, and that the children would thrive there and come to know him through being there. And little did I know that those prayers would sow a seed that I would reap in the future. A vacancy for a school governor came up at that school shortly after we began praying. And I thought it would be a good idea to apply and give it a go. And to my surprise, I was accepted. And I soon got stuck into learning all about the world of education, which I actually found really interesting. I hadn't ever thought about education and teaching really before. So it was all very new, and all the language and acronyms and everything was very confusing, but I did enjoy being part of it. At that time, I was working for the local authority. I really enjoyed my job. I had a part-time job. I worked with some amazing people. It was great. The kids were probably 10 and about 6 by then, and life was ticking along quite comfortably. And then one night, I woke in the middle of the night, and I heard an audible voice say to me, "I've got a new challenge for you, and you mustn't worry about the money." And I just knew that was Jesus speaking to me. And I was obviously wide awake at that point, and checked if anybody else had heard it, and my husband was led next to me and fast asleep, so obviously he didn't. So yeah, I was really excited and really curious to know what he meant by that. And the very next day I was at work, and I received a phone call from the school that we pray for and where I was the governor, asking if I could be part of an interview panel as a governor, because they wanted to appoint a new school secretary. And immediately I knew that I wanted to apply for the job, and I knew that this was the new challenge. However, the job was not for very many hours, less than I was currently working. The salary was not very good at all compared to what I was currently earning. And at that point, we as a family were going through a really tricky time financially, and it was really important that I earned as what I did, that we needed that money to be able to afford to pay our bills. But I remember that the Lord said, as well as the new challenge, that I wasn't to worry about the money. So I decided that I would do what he said, which is always a good plan. And I applied for the job, and I got the job. And that started an amazing 8 years working at that school. It was a church school, and so the head teacher was open to letting us, a group of us who were Christians on the staff, pray in our lunch break, and also to pray for colleagues who requested prayer for various things. We saw some amazing miracles happen while we were there. We saw a chronic bad back that a guy had had for many, many years, healed on the spot, completely healed, and is still healed to this day. I've seen him since, and it's still healed. We saw a growth on a finger just dissolve after prayer within the space of a few hours. It needed an operation, and after that point didn't need an operation. We actually saw some financial blessings as well. We used to pray if the school budget was looking a bit tight, as they always are, and it always came in over that we had more than enough financially, which was absolutely amazing. And I also had the opportunity to study for a qualification in school business management, which led to a promotion and a much higher salary. So actually in the end, I really didn't need to worry about the money. And probably the most memorable time that I remember the Lord speaking to me happened at a conference in February 2011. It was at a church in Hedge End, and the conference was called Transforming Your Community. The speaker was Matthew Barnett, who founded the LA Dream Centre, which is a ministry based in an old hospital in LA in the States, and it reaches out to the poor and the homeless, addicts, children that are fostered, looked after, all sorts of things. And he actually started the conference with a verse that I read out at the beginning. He told his story of how he was brought up as a pastor's son, and he thought he would change the world for Jesus by building a big church, preaching to thousands of people. He moved to LA to take over an old church, and it was a complete failure. The congregation all left. He was really fed up and ready to pack up and go home. But one night God told him to go to a really rough area of the city, which was a park, in the middle of the night. And he walked around this park and he just saw the desperate state of the people that were there. There were drug addicts, prostitutes, homeless people. And Matthew Barnett felt the Lord say to him, would he be prepared to serve and trust, to serve these people and trust God to build the church? And that night changed his life. He now heads up a ministry that has dream centres all over the United States. There's at least one here in the UK, and they do amazing things. They feed people who who have no food. They help people coming out of prison to rehabilitate. They help people get over addiction. It's just really inspiring what they're doing. And during that conference, I felt the Lord challenged me with the same question. Will you lay aside your dreams of how you think your future needs to look and how you think you're going to reach people with my good news? And will you just love and serve the poor for my sake? And of course, once again, I said yes. And I started to ask for his guidance on what that would look like where I lived, because clearly we don't have the same type of area as LA, and that is going to look very different in rural Dorset to how it looks in the United States. So I was praying about this for several months, and our church at the time was also looking for ways to be a blessing to their community and to reach out and help people. And during the summer of 2011, I was reading an article in the Times educational supplement about a teacher who'd watched a documentary that had been on the BBC recently called Poor Kids. And it was a documentary highlighting the fact that families who have children on free school meals really struggle in the holidays, because clearly there are no meals provided that are free for them for 6 weeks, which is a long time to have to find an extra meal for your children and also entertain them over the summer holidays. So she decided to get some friends together, and they actually connected with their local school, and they started to provide free meals every day over the lunchtime and feed children, and they provided activities and a little club for them as well. And by the end of that summer, she was actually operating in 3 locations near where she lived, and they called themselves Make Lunch. I saw that was something actually that could work in our area, and I contacted her, and she gave me lots of guidance about how we could set up the same sort of thing. At that point, I wasn't working through the school holidays, so I had lots of time to organise it. The church leaders were really keen for me to give it a go, and the rest of the church was very supportive, and we had loads of volunteers, and we actually managed to open in 2012. We opened in the summer of 2012, and we had so many volunteers that we were able to open every day. We were very fortunate that the local secondary school, the head teacher there, kindly let us use their canteen and the kitchen to serve the families. So we had a brilliant venue, and it was amazing. We didn't have a huge take up. We probably had 10 families that first year, but over the years since, we've changed the model. We don't provide cooked meals now. Because we actually saw that actually expecting families to come every day and to sit down and have a cooked meal, which was lovely because they got time to chat with the other families and just have a break. But actually that's quite a commitment every day in the middle of the day when you could be doing other things. So we changed the model to provide food packs instead. And the families come once a week. They collect a food parcel, and for the last few years we've been offering tea and coffee and cake and a few activities as well. Unfortunately this year we're not able to do that, obviously, but from starting with 10 families in 2012, this summer we're reaching nearly 200 families. We receive funding from lots of different organisations, from churches to town council, various other charities give to us. It's very much a partnership between the local church and the community. And this year we've formed a charity called Daughters to Family Support. And as you would understand, our numbers have grown this year due to COVID. So, only God could have known 8 years ago when we started that this was coming, and that actually we were going to be used. He was going to use us to feed 200 families and be a blessing to them in a really, really tough time. So I'm going to stop there because I think I've spoken for long enough. There's lots more that I could share, but thank you for listening. I hope it's been a blessing and encouragement to you, and I look forward to sharing more another time.